Well, I had there's quite a few things obviously with what's going on and conversations we've had in the podcast last few weeks. Um, Stuff we've chatted about, and what I think is really great about what we started here is we really don't have an agenda outside if we have somebody we respect that we want to have on and have a conversation, and their background leads to the topics or whatever. But I think what's really cool is if you're listening to this or been listening to it, you know, as a follower now, we don't have any back conversation of like, here's the thing that we're going to talk about today. Sometimes we'll hop on and it's just what's present and first front of mind. And I'll go back and edit our podcast, pay attention to them, listen to the conversations, relearn things. And the thing I was thinking about today was you could look at, I would say, some of our interviews, some of our conversations, and they could be, from my perspective, they could be not heavy, but they're thought provoking on purpose, right? For personal growth or you're working through something. Um, but the dichotomy of our relationship is that I think that we will have these conversations that they're in depth, they're well thought out, they're, to help work through something, or you and I are sharing experiences, or we're, you know, working through a situation, or it's just growth, or it's again, like it's just thought provoking. But the thing I was really thinking about today, as I was kind of looking through some of the ones that we've done, is you'll see glimmers of this one thing. And when you and I talked about doing this podcast, I said, when we committed to doing it, I immediately started laughing. Or I immediately, even right now, have a smile on my face. And it wasn't out of folly. It was out of this sheer thing of like years and years of my entire life built up having conversations with you have always been rooted in humor. And like I said, I think sometimes we talk about it in business settings, one-on-one conversations. If they're meant to be with a purpose, we can be serious, we can be whatever, but I think our relationship, I think how we deal with things, that even the hardest things in this life that we've had to go through, talk about whatever, ironically, how we cope is with an immense amount of humor. And I was thinking about some of our podcasts, even with our guests, I can see where some of it will come out. And honestly, it can be very childish. It's like a swear word slips by. And you can see us, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a smile on my face because immediately I'm a child, and it's kind of funny to me. It's on purpose. It's not meant to be malicious, but it's funny. But I was thinking about our podcast today, and I was like, I think for me, a topic would be operating your life with some set resemblance of humor, right? I think some of these topics we've talked about, again, like you said, analyzing where you are in your life, personal growth, your situation. Again, all of them you could listen to them like, oh God, I got to work on this. I can do this. But I was thinking about our conversations, like I said, and we've worked on these things or we've discussed these things, but there is always something that is, whether it's just a joke or whatever, cut the tension. It's ingrained in us, and it's something that I've really enjoyed, and I try to pass on to our kids and with clients or whatever, or people that I'm working with. And I just kind of wanted to see what your perspective was on that, because I was like, it's not, I think it's lost today. It's not done with, like I said, it's not malicious humor. We'll tease. And I think we always had this teasing, maybe it's a locker room thing, but you and I have always had that within our relationship. Um, to a point where maybe we're digging on each other, but it's just how we are. And it's never taken in a, like, trying to hurt your feelings kind of way, but it's always allowed for tough conversations, tough situations to be lighter. Um, and I just think that some of that hasn't been maybe highlighted as much up until this point. So I just kind of wanted to get your perspective. That was my one thing on my mind today, perspective when it comes to operating in humor in the workspace, in your relationships, in life. Like, do you have a thought process, feeling on how you do you feel the same way about like interjecting humor to get through stuff? Um,
Yeah, I mean, my thought is this, and it life is a series of suffering. And people are, oh, that seems kind of dark, you know. It's well, whatever stage you're in your life, whatever moment you're in the year, whatever this week holds for you, there's something that is difficult for you, right? And it's just an a never ending conveyor belt of these things coming at you, you know. And so, the old saying is, if you're not laughing, you're crying, is kind of where I go at it. In terms of being, you got to have some humor about it, but I love this old joke about the guy that went to, he wanted to go see this guy supposed to be the wise, shaman in the world. And he was in England and he was an explorer and he raised all this money for this great expedition he's going to go up. And it was like in the Tibetan mountains, and he's on a wood sailing ship, and he's got the crew and provisions for 2 years and all this. They finally get it together. They go on this, weeks and weeks of sailing. Then it's months of climbing up in the mountains and to go find this wise man in the cave and go to find this guy. And there he is in the back of the cave with a fire and sitting there and, very contemplative person. And he goes, and this explorer tells him, I'm so glad that we finally made it here. You know, uh, it was been a lot of tribulations getting here and storms, and we lost a Sherpa climbing the mountain, and it goes through this whole the arduous journey to get to the man. He goes, so because I was told that you had insights into life. What was the meaning of life? And the old man, after he goes through this whole thing, looks up from him from across the fire. He says, life is like a fountain. It doesn't say anything else. And this explorer pauses. That's it. Life is like a fountain. I went here and risked my fortune and the lives of others. In fact, somebody lost their life to come up here and climb up and find you. And that's your insight. Life is like a fountain. And the wise man looked at him across the fire and said, well, shit, maybe it isn't. So I think that's that's really the deal. You can be as deep as you want to be about it. I think people get a little too serious about themselves, me included, from time to time. Uh, they want to be seen as somebody of weight, somebody of importance and all that kind of stuff. You're a jack. You know what I mean? We're little tiny people on a big earth that's been here for millennia, and it'll keep going on after we're gone. So why we just enjoy things a little bit. And uh, most of the humor is about small failures, not about big victories. It's just like when you go, I don't know. I just had something recently happen, some silly ass thing, and you're going, my God, oh, it was a simple thing. So I get up in the morning, I'm kind of half awake, and I'm a coffee guy. I'm going to go through my little routine, make my coffee and stuff, and uh, don't put the basket in the coffee maker. Put the coffee right in the coffee maker. It's all over the place. I have some, supplements. If I'm just some that are, powder, right? And I'm going to go mix that up, and I put water in this glass with the stuff, right? I'm going to spin it up. I've got coffee creamer in it, not creatine, coffee creamer. You know what I mean? So you're just going, wow, you are totally out of it today. So I gotta clean up that mess, reset the whole thing. Let's try this one more time with feeling. Okay. Yeah. So little things like that, you got to laugh at yourself. It's like, oh. I don't know. I think there's this world of social media has made people think that they are on all the time. They're on. And so I want people to tell me I'm a serious human being and all that stuff. And every person is a serious human being on a certain topic, and but you're not all that all the time, and so I think you got to kind of laugh at yourself and go, we just, there's, if you were going to sit there and just take something and turn it into a weighty problem every time it comes up, or multiple different things, right? You'd be worn down to a nubbin in no time. You'll just be like, and I think that's the thing I see. It's too much on this scrolling, and look, I do it too. I like the shorts and watch them and all that stuff, but you can overdo that routine, and you go, oh man, I went down the rabbit hole there, uh, and then there's just that whole people, because you're able to do this with quite a bit of ease compared to didn't own a TV studio, right?
Right.
And not that it's easy, but it's certainly less complicated with technology today than it was, say, 30 years ago or whatever. And so people feel like they've got to be projecting their life and their philosophy and all that kind of stuff. Really, most people don't give a shit, and, if you have something for 30 seconds that's maybe people relate to, cool, uh, if you don't find it useful, throw it away. I don't care, but but you got to laugh at yourself. I mean, it's like, it's just, I get irritated by things I shouldn't be irritated by. I make fun of things that are serious and I shouldn't make fun of, you know, because deep down inside, I'm 12 years old, you know, so I find it funny. It's like giggling in church or laughing at a funeral. Who knows? I don't know what it is, Somebody
It's like,
says
yeah,
somebody says the word like penis and you giggle, whatever.
and that's what I I was like I said, I was reflecting on it, and that's always been our relationship in particular, and then I think even you could extend that into our family. It's some of my best memories of having a bigger family with 6 kids, and you look at like the best holidays ever, all of us literally teasing each other, but to a point where everybody's laughing, and it's just I don't know. Maybe it was how it was. We were all brought up that way. Again, like I said, it started out. I think a little bit of that some of my best friends. That's what you would do, and not done in a mean way, and not to put you down. It was just always rooted in humor. And I was just thinking about the topics, right, as we've kind of combed through them, and that was my thought process. It was like, man, you come across something. Again, yeah, like you said, it's a failure, it's a mistake, it's a bad conversation. And for me, I don't know if it's again how we would always interact, or that I look back on when we grew up with all the kids and my siblings. We loved to sit around and if we could catch a movie together, especially one that was funny to where everybody was laughing, or a stand-up comedy thing or whatever. It was always the best because we were all laughing together. And, with our kids now, when we're at the dinner table every single day, what we'll go through is like, what was your high? What was your low? And what was your knee slapper? And we'll do it to all of them. And then they'll do it to us as well. And there'll be days where I have to sit there and think, well, what was my slapper today? Did I have a really good, like, this thing that made me laugh? And I'm actually more taken back, less by any sort of low, right? Whatever that is. I'm more taken back if I can't consciously remember having a good solid laugh during the day. And I think that was just rooted in what we were, um, kind of how we were brought up. And when I think about this, of like how we've used laughter at, to cope. And I think on our last call with Michelle, you brought up a story of your brother. So my uncle Jack. So when he passed away, and I was thinking about this, and like he was very emotional. It's not an easy time, to go through everything that we're going through. And, there's spiritual aspect to it. There's all this kind of stuff. And I immediately, and it's not right, wrong, or indifferent. There's this period where you and I are staying together in another state for multiple days, just trying to, cope. and cope with the feelings of the whole situation and everything that's going on. And I start laughing because it's 3 in the morning and we're at a Waffle House deep in Texas and we're exhausted and we haven't due to the dynamics of the situation we're in, we're not eating where we're at. So we got to get something. So we go to this Waffle House because it's the only thing that's open 24 hours. And going back to the movie analogy, I was like, I feel like everything, whether it's good or bad, in my head always goes back to some sort of comedy scene or comedy movie, that this is how I'm watching it. Not that it relates to a specific movie, but all of a sudden these scenes become comedy scenes in my head. And so here you and I are, you know, some decent sized fellas with a couple shaved heads at a Waffle House in Texas, exhausted and hungry. And the clientele at a 24-hour diner
Top
is
notch.
top notch. And we're just watching all of this transpire. There's some questionable folks that are in there that are now staring at us because I have this moment where I look at you and go, these people look at us like we look like we could be perceived as maybe law enforcement at this point. Just, you know, the way we're dressed, the way we look, the way whatever. And there's some questionable characters. And I always go back to that situation of it's not an easy few days. And here we are in this thing, and we are probably delirious and sleep deprived too, but laughing hysterically, as we're eating, as we're leaving the next day, just in the situations we'll put ourselves in. And, you could look back on it and be sad of what was going on at the time. But I'll look back on it from the connection of I got to spend time with my uncle during, again, it's not a woohoo moment, right? He's passing. It's tough, but I got to be there in that transition. So I get to carry that with me and I got to be there. But then I also got to be there with my dad and, be there through that tough time, but then also share this level of levity and humor. That as
You,
I reflect back, I'll
you,
always be laughing about
Charlene.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
Even that.
it's like a Pulp Fiction scene to me, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah. It was. Yeah, it was slightly like the bar scene in Star Wars. The uh, yeah. But going back to the Jack thing, because the humor thing, right? So here he is. He's in a lot of pain, and he's drugged up, and it is what it is. And but you know that guy could make me laugh, so much. But can I, he can barely talk, Hey Jack, can I get you something? Yeah, how about a Modelo? You know, and then, uh, you know, uh, and then later on, closer to the end, hey Jack, can I get you something? He goes, yeah, a 357. you know, and and then really close to when he was like non-communicative, right? Uh, how are you doing, Jack? I was laying on the bed with him, right? When he goes, I'll be okay. People like that whole thing about the situational awareness is what it is. I mean, you want to talk about clarity of thought. It doesn't get any better than that, you know.
Mm.
But I've often laughed about him, you know, uh, it just you got to listen. You just have to. You have to laugh about things. It's it's a life is a shit show in a lot of regard. A lot of aspects. And you just gotta. Well, I kind of booted that one, or whatever it is, and you keep going on. There really is no quitting. So how are you going to deal with it? One have some self-deprecating humor about it. I guess could have done a little better job on that one. Whatever, and start laughing at yourself. But I do think people get too into the serious side of things and going. Uh, they're always projecting this, you know, I'm a person of weight. Whatever, I assume everybody's a person of weight in certain topics, right? Or whatever it is. But you don't have to put on this persona 24 hours a day that I've got my shit together.
Right.
Don't you wish you were like me?
It's interesting, I think, and I don't know if it's just my perception, and it's the respect that I have for the stand-up comedians, especially this day and age, right? With the seriousness of, like you said, whether it's social media or topics or whatever, they're given this, uh, because of their profession, they're almost given this leeway to just have observational humor of what's going on. It doesn't matter the topic. And I think that that's why people watch so much of it. I feel like, and again, it can be technology, like you said, the ease of putting stuff out now, social media, podcasting, Netflix, whatever. It seems to be, I think it seems to be more consumed now because of how serious everybody seems to be acting. Yet these people in this profession, not only are they articulate, they're able to convey thought, they're also able to basically shine a mirror on society, and it's rooted in, you know, what they see. I don't want to call it truth, but then everybody seems to laugh so hard at it because they see it too, but we just don't act like it. We don't let it go. We don't, we don't say it because we think we're going to offend somebody, and we're not trying to be offensive, and we're not trying to do all that kind of stuff. But then in their profession, it allows them to let it rip, which again, like I said, in your everyday life, it's not done with malice and it's not done with folly, but it's just, I think it's just a good way
Sure. And
to
I
to
don't, I,
move
who
through
doesn't,
it.
who doesn't like to laugh? I mean, in fact, that's one of my main observations of people. If I don't see them naturally smile or spontaneously laugh out loud, I'm going, that's a weirdo, right? It is, because that's just strange to me. And uh, yeah, and then the comedians, I mean, a lot of them got canceled, and then they were early on to put an uh, pin in that and go, no, this is supposed to offend you. This is supposed to be shocking. This is
Yeah.
supposed to be thought provoking, and they just went the other way earlier than society did. And that's great. It's great because um, uh, it's just good for you. It's just good for you. You get wrapped up in all this. I can say this and I can't say that, and whatever. Um, Ultimately, I think people need to just observationally. They need to have a sense of who they are and not give that up to anybody. I don't have to be everybody's friend. In fact, I don't give a shit, if I'm your friend or not. I don't need friends. Okay. And that sounds, oh my God, don't you need friends? Don't you have friends? Yeah, I have all of those things, but I don't seek them constantly. I'm not trying to turn every person I meet at the grocery store into my friend. And I give a shit. Or at the gym or wherever it is. You know what I mean? And I think there are some people like, there's that please like me thing,
Mhm.
you know? And, well, whether it's just some, um, character flaw of my own, or I don't find any interest in it at all. you know I was talking today about going to the gym, and the people want to get your attention, right? you know I mean, there's young guys my age, and they're all walking around all yoked up and going like that, and it was, buddy, been there, done that. I'm here doing some reps and getting the hell out. And then it's the same with ladies, young ladies, old ladies. Oh, hi, like, I'm listening to a podcast, just trying to create community out of nothing, you know. I mean, I find that annoying. I don't know why, but I'm just like, I think there's just people who they think it so much, so hard, they're never going to get it, because when you give that kind of personal stuff to people, it should be to the right people. And you'll know it when it's the right people, you like we said, you have friends that you don't talk to for a year. And it's like you talked to them today and it was like you talked to them yesterday, and those are true people, those are really, by the way, Big John L. I'm going to be talking to in this week from Minnesota. So it'll be good to talk to him. He's a funny.
Speaking of laughter, he's one of them for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, yeah, I don't know if it's not, like you said, looking for connection, a sense to self, the fear of a lot of different things. And I think what brought this up too is I'll consume, you know, whether reading books or I do a lot of a couple of things with podcasts as far as thought provoking stuff myself. And this is an easy one because it's the number one podcast in the world. It's like I like
Oh,
Rogan's
we're
podcast.
number one now.
No, no, yeah, it's us. Rogan's podcast. And for a multitude of reasons, it's not that's because, that's how popular his podcast is. I got years of being in martial arts community and traveling around and, been able to go watch it before it was what it is, sneak into some of his, with you, at different states, we snuck in knowing he was working on material before his podcast is what it is. But I was listening to him. I think he has the most recent one out, which made me think about it. And he's got Matthew McConaughey on, who I love. I've listened his book. I recommend that to everybody. If you haven't heard Green Lights, do the audio on that, the audible book, because he reads it. And a great journey of a successful life, but thought-provoking individual, a religious individual, does it with the self-deprecating humor, right? And very intelligent. And not to mention, you got that Texas accent, which just makes it, makes it even better. Um, but I was listening to them have this conversation, and I think McConaughey asked them about something along the lines of, you know, being worried about what you say, especially this day and age. He goes, well, I don't have to worry about it. And he kind of glosses over it. I think McConaughey circles back. Well, what do you mean you don't have to worry about it? Was like, well, I don't have a job that's reliant or like that I can necessarily get fired from. Right. He has his own podcast, his own platform. He could have, if maybe a platform could cancel him, but he could pick it up and go to a different one, especially with the popularity. Or, again, you're a stand-up comedian. You have a little bit of like the well, I'm meant to be kind of offensive and thought provoking through all of it. But the thing that got me was he goes, I don't worry about all of those things. All I worry about is, am I a good person? And I'm like, I think that says it all when it comes to humor, how you interact, whatever. I was like, do you to the core of you feel like you are a good person trying to do good things as much as you can? Now you're going to screw it up. But then when it comes to interjecting a humor in a situation or within your own life, is it always, like for me, is it rooted there? Probably for a lot of people, is it rooted with your faith? Is it rooted with you're on that path of goodness, overall? And you're going to trip and fall and make mistakes 100 million times along the way. But at the end of the day, are you doing your best to be your best and constantly evolving in that? Then it doesn't have to be so serious.
I think uh, so. When you think about faith and religion, and and I'm a believer, and but I'm not a. I want you to be a believer because I'm a believer. I want you to come to your own conclusion of what it is. But um, being reflective every day about yourself, and like we all have a graveyard of mistakes behind us. Some small, some we view as great and stuff, but they're done. Okay. And so it's today. right? Going forward. And you put distance between you and mistakes that you vow never to repeat, right? And that's important, you know. It's important because people say, oh, no, it didn't happen yesterday. It happened 40 years ago. And what were you in those other intervening years, right? As a person. So I think people need to think about, for instance, in Christianity, right? We are a, uh, we are a gang of badasses. In our mind, we think, oh, they go to church and they do good deeds and they, oh, that I wish I was just this angelic person and stuff. No, 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 no. We are a gang of sinners. We're a bad bunch of badasses that we've been given grace. That's the way I picture it. And every day is a battle against the badass part of it. And and everybody's got their take. But for me, it's not like, oh, I got to this one point in my life and everything was cool. No, it's a struggle every day against the demons, right? The wolf is circling the door all the time. I mean, there's interesting thought about wherever there's God, there's the devil, so right next to each other. So, and part of it's a choice, and part of it's a self-awareness thing, you know. Uh, but this idea that you can get to some point of purity, for me, is total bullshit.
Right.
I've I fight bad thoughts all the time, all the time. Doesn't matter. You give me a topic, I'll tell you where I'll go with it. So, but there's a certain awareness of that it's not good for you, right? Uh, there's a difference. And the other thing is, people will say, "Oh boy, if you think like that, no, no, everybody has it. It doesn't matter." I'm not going to go through all the things that you could be thinking. The difference is there's a huge chasm between thinking something and acting upon it. And what comes in between there is the self reflection. And, you know, I feel that's where God comes to you and says, that's a bad thought. And you shove it away and it dissipates and you don't act on it. And a lot of it is fleeting, right? It's just kind of the way we are. But I like to envision Christians as this badass gang of people who just are trying to do better, just trying to do better.
That's an interesting conversation. Obviously, we started talking about humor, but now as we segue, because you and I've we had this conversation a few months ago, and I'm personally, revisiting and I say revisiting, actually spending the time to, and this isn't to be holier than thou or that revisiting and reading the Bible. And for years, I mean, I had spent a small sliver of, school years going to Catholic school, going to church intermittently, right out. So having faith and being a believer my whole life. And then battling, what was considered right or wrong as far as like, well, you don't go every Sunday. Well, then you should feel bad about it. And then for me, it was always, I'm going to do everything I can through the mistakes that I believe that all of that still exists. I have faith in God and the actions that I put forth every single day. I always had this vision that I would get to the pearly gates, right? And there's a check-in. Again, this is where the humor comes in my head. There's a bouncer. Right. And it's like, it's an angel at the door and they're going to have a little checklist and they're going to view and take a little, they already know that you can't BS your way in. Right. And they look down and go, oh yeah, you did good things and you did the best that you could in the image that we put you down there for. Why don't you come on in? And that's how I've envisioned it. There's always been rooted in this, and for a long time, it's been I'm gonna be a good person, and now re-exploring some of that stuff from a faith standpoint. You and I've had this conversation, and I said this to you. I think, and everybody's perception of like scripture, the Bible, all that kind of stuff. It's open to their own print. It's like any movie. It's like any book. You and I could read the same book and have a different. We're gonna have a different mental image of how we would perceive the main character, right? And then we would go watch the movie of the book, and I'd be like, "Oh, that character was spot on." Like, "Oh, that's not what I thought in my head, based on what I read," right? Because we're gonna have our own image of the same writing. And so I think that that's where we get into this. Like we all have our own interpretation of the words, and why, it took me a long time when you hear people say, well, I'm always going back to it and I'm always reading it because you're going to, at a different age and a different stage in life, you're going to perceive it or receive it a little bit different. And the thing that you said to me one time that, and actually you said it a couple of times and said it to me most recently that made the most sense to me was like, I just wanted to keep in mind the thought of, as you read this, that these were real people going through a real time in life that was hard. And, and as you go through it, and actually now that I'm spending time actually at this stage of my life, I probably being open to receiving, actually paying attention to it versus just reading it to check a box and say I read it. You're blown away by the amount of, you know, anger, hatred, all the things that existed at that time, pain, and then, people looking for something, looking to believe in faith, and all that kind of stuff. But I think the thing that you said to me was like, keep in mind that these were real people going through a really tough time. And
Yep.
then that made so much more sense. Like it started to make sense to me a little bit more to put, and then you're able to pull forward. Time has changed. Situations have changed, but people are still going through tough times and it's the same thing. So then it becomes applicable, right?
Yeah, I don't think this whole evolution of man concept, right? I which is uh, more academic than in reality. Uh, we're no different than somebody 2,000 years ago. We're it's just we live in different things, we wear different clothes, but it all comes down to the uh, above and internal. That's it. And uh, so and I used to think, wow, those people, they do a lot of good acts, right? People go, oh, they're doing that. And it's great. There's great things to be said about doing those kind of things, right? If you can, do it, right? But you're not, in my opinion, you're not working your way to heaven by good acts because you were already given the grace of God. Okay. So if that was the case, every uh, narco drug dealer would just buy their way into heaven,
Right.
right? Oh, I'll build a school and I'll do that. And you see that, they do that for their communities. Does that make them a good person? Does that, no. So, it's more of an internal thing. And you cannot earn something that is going to be given to you, right? Okay. You know, how much, how much was that? and I, it's interesting. I mean, I'm obviously not some biblical scholar or any of that kind of stuff. I'm like anybody else. I would like to know more. That's simply it. I want to know more. I want to understand it myself. I want to understand it as it's meant for me to understand. Okay. Not for anybody else, not any, you know, and I'm fairly private about it other than here,
Mm.
but, I just think that, it is the journey that you'll be meant to have, and would I have done better in some stages of my life leaning into that more? Sure, no question. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there because my idea of faith goes back to my mother, who I saw it every day. She was a wonderful person. She, She read the Bible. She didn't preach. She didn't do anything. Didn't ever foist it upon you, you know. Uh, but I have an original Bible she gave me, and it said, and it's in the one line in there, in her own handwriting, right? It says, Matthew, read, study, and learn about a Christian life. And, that's important. That theme has run through my whole life, except for I'm more actively pursuing that thought, you know, but the thought never did not exist. Of course it did. So, and it's not just from her, from God, whatever. You have to, we're, we're so damaged as people, um, that we have to fight every day, uh, the demons, and uh, I don't care who you are. And I know we look at people and go, God, they are just fantastic and stuff. I don't know if they don't go home and beat their kids and yell at their wife, kick the dog. I don't know anything about it. But in public, again, it's sometimes it's the Facebook image of their life, even spiritually, and I have no right to tell anybody about their life or faith or whatever it is. It's just this is I'm trying to understand it more and trying to apply it more. Period. And and I'm happy to listen to people who are, and there's some badass Christians in the world. you you know look around, you can find them, and they're on media too. So it's just interesting to look at people's perspective of it. It's not a crutch, it's not an excuse, it is a standard to be met. And that seems to me to be just like you're trying to make your one rep max. This is this is the deal. We're gonna keep working out. I'm showing up every day, and yesterday I could have done a little better. Today I'm going to try to be better than that. Kind of thing. So, you know, I feel for people who don't have it. I understand it. I also feel for people who overplay it, because some people just do it out of that was the way they were raised, and that's the way I'm supposed to do it. And I do this, and if I do this, I go here. I think it's the way it is. I have no chance. I have no misconception that, as far as I'm concerned, the elevator will certainly go both ways. And, and I'm not trying to get out of the other direction. I'm just, the self awareness of it's different, and, but yeah, that the studying the word, trying to understand it, that's the one thing we all just want to understand it, don't we? Don't we understand it? Why would people keep coming back to it if they didn't want to understand it and it didn't have value? If you picked up a book and you started reading it and go, you just quit reading the book. You go like, but why do people keep coming back in their life? But they keep coming back because there's a lot of truth in it, and some of the truth in it you just don't understand yet. And that's that whole thing about you're saying, rereading it. You're going, I catch myself reading things and going, let's slow down a little bit here. I'm not gonna read a chapter. I'm gonna read this verse, you know, and think about it for a second, and that kind of thing. And I just feel like in this world there's so much uh, obvious evil going on. It's all around us, and it's not pretty. Uh, so we may be driving in new cars and living in new houses, doing all that kind of stuff, but we're no different than whether we were herding goats out on the field, someplace. We're still people. All the same things apply. And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
I may get to the gate and the guy goes, oh, you had it all wrong.
But I think to simplify it and not to downplay it, of course, I love we've said this multiple times. I love the weight room analogy. I love the sports analogy. It's simplistic and it makes sense. It takes a very heavy topic and then it makes it very applicable to today, right? Like in the pursuit of your next one rep max, in the pursuit of your best mile, in the pursuit of your all that kind of stuff is wrought with failure, right? Every time. Never do you ever get to it and go crush it the first time. Never. Right. And then when you do, the end zone moves. And then the only way for that to move further is wrought by what? More failure. And I think that for me, again, we've never been for a lot of those same reasons. And obviously I'm your son. So a lot of that could be, nurture, right? Not overly expressive of those things. And for some people, they're like, well, that's what you should be if you have faith. Well, it's not the way that I interpret that I need to be. And I'm enamored by greatness, right? I use Rogan as example. I use athletes as example. I use actors, and I don't know any of their personal life, but in their moment of their thing, maybe they're great at something. And Jordan,
Yeah.
right? And I'm enamored with their great in pursuit of that thing that is also wrought with a lot of failure. And I think that that's now when it comes to exploring my own faith again, that's where I'm enamored by the greatness, right? Of, like you said, the book. My gosh, how could you transcend this much time and this many people to go back to things that are still applicable 2025 years later, plus over that, if you go even further back for, the Old Testament and stuff like that. And I think that that's where I find myself enamored by it. And now just learning and exploring from a people standpoint, like you said, we're all flawed. And I think for me, diving in and understanding like the original 12 disciples, all flawed individuals, all picked because they were flawed individuals. And if anything, I think that as we talk about the pursuit of our own personal growth or being better people or whatever, that's hope, right? To understand that these people were picked because they were flawed and continued to be flawed in their own right, whether they were tax collectors or they were zealots, hunting people down, whatever, but had created and continued to create, even though they were brought into the inner circle, mistakes. So what does that give you today? Hope,
Right.
right? And I think that that's where it starts to connect it. Like, I'm like, all right, okay, yep. You were
Yeah.
normal people in the pursuit of betterment on your own journey and you made massive mistakes. But your goal is to not continually repeat them.
There's just little vignettes in the whole story that are always kind of, you have to personalize it because, you can read it quickly, and as you go back, like things like uh, Judas betraying Jesus, right? And so this line, and he was one of the 12.
Right.
Okay. Think about that. And Jesus knew he was one of the 12 and he knew what he was going to do, but he was one of the ones he chose. And so that whole concept, that the betrayal had to happen, you know, and then you will deny me to Simon Peter, right? 3 times before the rooster will crow, right? And when he does his final, I don't know, no, because there's, I don't know the guy, and and Jesus looked at him, and he knew. See, and that's the thing, and then right, and that's the thing that everybody is afraid to face is the truth of themselves, and uh, great, it's there's a lot. a lot to be gained out of that kind of thing. And so, like I said, I'm not a preacher. I'm just somebody trying to study and continue to think about uh, how those apply. I really, one of the things that I go over and over in my mind is just the crucifixion. You set aside all the things you know about that and you think about, you'll hear somebody say or speak about it, and, you know, he was questioned. Okay. Now, in your life, somebody that's hated and is seen as a threat, what do you think question look like? He was beat, you know, then he was whipped, then the crowning of thorns, then the cross, then the crucifixion, and did it willingly. I mean, think about that. Think about that. Uh, you know, who steps through that. And I heard a guy the other day, and you know, it made me uh, almost kind of laugh because it's true, and he goes, if Christ came back tomorrow, we'd kill him again because that's that's the flaw of man. you know, this guy, who's this guy think he is? You know.
Right.
Anyway, it's just interesting. You got you, and I think every iteration you go through it, you try not to flavor it with personal things, but I try to go back and be fairly pure about what I'm reading, and that's when you slow it up and go, yeah, well, you can just cruise by. You can just cruise by the scourging or the flogging. Okay, think about this. Back in the day, punishment was always 40 minus 1. 40 lashes minus 1, so 39, right? There's no indication of how many lashes Christ took at the post. And you can imagine somebody who they wanted to kill and were afraid of. It wasn't just 39. So, you know, just filleted, and, that's man, right there. It's
Yeah.
just, and that's that. And there's also that meanness and evil in humanity, and we all have it. We have moments of it. We have flares up, in our mind. And you go, oh, that's it. So anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but it's an interesting challenge. It's a challenge, and one not to be just intellectual about it.
Right.
You can have people who are, and I've heard this before said about like Jordan Peterson. He's a great speaker and he's a great uh, student of all of this, right? And he speaks very well of it. And I've read all his books, and it's great. It's amazing, And I don't really know if he's a Christian, and he never really says what it is, but he will say, "How could you not be?" But he doesn't, you know what I mean? So anyway, it's a neophyte. Is a good term to use.
Trying. Right. I think the other thing too is, from my perspective in this day and age, is like, that's my thought process or that's my journey. That's what I believe. But there are different religions. There are different beliefs. There are different, and I also think that that's okay. That's okay for you and your personal journey, your personal vehicle. That's your hope and that's your faith and that's your for you. And it's not my responsibility to convince you otherwise. It's my responsibility to take my beliefs and follow it the best that I can. And we circle it back to like the humor aspect of it is that, again, there is going to be negative things, negative thoughts, situations, sins, if you want to call them, that are going to come and go throughout your life. And can you, clean them up? Can you repent them? And then I do just, there's something about interjecting humor in that process. Otherwise, you are going to be a miserable individual on the journey, right? Because you're constantly reflecting on the missteps while trying to attain joy. So, like we talk about, how do you enjoy how do you have happiness and joy in the process in pursuit of anything? I'm like, I think that that's for me, the circling back to the humor aspect of it is you're still going towards this beacon, or you're still, and along the way, it's gonna be a climb. It's gonna be some gorges. You're gonna get skinned up. You're gonna bleed. You're gonna bruise. But if you can't laugh along the way of that journey and make it joyful, it's just a miserable pursuit, and then you're just hoping to get there, and then you're going to be happy. And then you're going to, it's all going to be great. Well, that's a miserable way to be if you can't enjoy the process even when it sucks. And I think humor is the best way
Sure.
to make that journey all the better.
Yeah, I think people, you shouldn't make your death the end goal. Hey, when I get there, well, Matt's going to be perfect. You know what I mean? That seems like um, I had a friend one time talking about it, and this is the humor part of it, right? We're alcoholic, and he goes, "Oh, my wife is just like do this and do that too." And he was a great guy. I knew his wife too. He goes, I told her, when you're looking over me with the open casket, I know what's going through your mind. If I just had a little more time, he was damn near perfect. So, yeah, you can't, don't give up enjoying life in pursuit of some perfection, that's the old thing about, right? Sacrificing the good for the perfect.
Yeah.
You can't do it, and, you know, every day is a series of, small victories and small failures, and, whatever. You can pick anything you want, a conversation, whatever, putting your creamer in your supplement glass, whatever, Yeah, it's the way it is, but, um, and we talked about this earlier in one of the other episodes is about being grateful. And it is very hard when you're busy. Uh, I like to say my prayers. I like to say things that I'm grateful for. Whether it's the health, home, income, and really not needs thing. And I go through all the children and all their spouses and all that, but it's just something I do, right? Before, and sometimes the daily things sleep and I have to stop myself, reset, and start over again and stay focused on what it is. But I think if you start the day being thankful for what you have and not worried about what you don't have, it's a good way to go at it. Um, these are, like I said, these, I guess, real first world problems around here.
But I believe that the exact same thing, and I've talked about it too. I think in order to have more, be more, whatever, right? We're always pursuit of something. We have to have gratitude for where we are and what we're given today. Otherwise, we're, I would say, regardless of your belief system, this God, universe, whatever, is not going to give you more if you can't be grateful for what you have,
Yeah.
right? So I totally believe that too. And I said, there's a lot of power in that, especially in the morning, starting your day that way, for the roof over your head or the food you have or the family, whatever that is for you. all of those things, if it's circled in gratitude and genuine gratitude, not just again the check mark box to say it, but done with real conviction. I mean, that's my belief then too, is that, you know, it also makes everything that you're gonna go deal with the rest of the day a little less, I don't say impactful, but a little less troublesome because you're good, you know? And
I think
I don't we spend enough time reflecting on where we are right now with gratitude.
I think you start the day. It's like having a solid foundation in your house. Gratitude is so when you start there, you go, okay, right. This is not a zero sum game. It's not like, I'm going to go out there today and some of my gratitude's going to fall away, you know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Most likely you're going to find more things to be grateful for. Small things. I mean, we catch ourselves all the time. Little things. It can be silly. Like, thank God for that. I mean, just like you just miss, like just the bus almost hit you, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. And it can be
Yeah.
small, it can be small things like, wow, we were fortunate that that didn't happen in the way it happened. And, I like to think that that's some directional hand, you know, so nudge you over here, say you're okay. But you have to look back on it and go, it wasn't because I was all that, I observed that and I handled it properly. And most of it is like, wow, you go, that's dumb luck, whatever. And no, it's not dumb luck.
There's a
But
better one.
look, it's all, we're trying. That's what we got to do, you know. Otherwise, what's the other option? Well, just flop around through life, you know. I'll just take it as it comes, and that's not going to turn.
Right.
It never
I
is.
think, yeah, at the end of it, it's and that's why I enjoy it. It's a curiosity, having questions, seeking answers, rooted in a pursuit of the best person you could be and the best life you can create for you and those around you in the time that you have. I think
Yeah. I remember and we did this in some other group setting, but here's the deal for me. That repetitive noise in your head that says you should do this or you should stop that, to me, is the voice of God. It said, you need to stop doing this. You need to start doing this. And it's the one that you keep shoving off because you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't know. Mom, I don't want to go to school. Here's the deal. And once you step over that line, whatever that issue is, and you start putting distance between you and that issue, whatever, your life will get better uh, exponentially. That's been my experience, you know. And and I have lots of sympathy for people who struggle with all kinds of things because we all have the same flaws. We got this imperfect uh, tool we're dealing with, I'm trying to dig a ditch with a spoon, you know.
we're just trying to sharpen the pencil over and over. And somehow it keeps getting dull. And so you got to go back to the sharpening.
Right, right. I'm just hoping before the lead hits the little silver band, I still can write.
That's a good analogy. Well, I think that this is something obviously could be revisited, right? And um, I think it's just a good conversation. And we've had these, and um, I think it's good for people. There's some good reflection, and just kind of analyze where you're at, and hopefully some of it, whether it's again humor or reflection or awareness or curiosity, helps you wherever you are right now, and then helps you if you need a course correction, set sail for whatever that beacon is for you. And I think it's
Right.
good.
So,
Well,
listen, you know what? We need people to like, share, subscribe, comment, and we have and I know eventually we'll put it on. We have a email. It's warriors not wimps at Gmail. If you want to write us about topics, and so we'd appreciate that. And anybody's listening to it, thank you. Anybody that you can get it to, do it. And but we're open to anything you want to talk about. So as you can see, we're not tied to an agenda.
and we're having fun with it. So, yes, appreciate you guys that are listening and sharing and talking about it. And it's been fun for us. And Dad, till the next one. I love you.
I love you
Thank
too.
you. And we'll chat soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.